So welcome everyone. My name is Duco. I'm the CEO of Haymarket HQ. And today we're introducing the program, the Australia-Vietnam Growth Program, which is a 4-month program to help you explore Vietnam. Whether you are a tech company, whether you're a peak body, this program is really all about helping you understand your opportunity there, helping you understand how to capitalize on that opportunity, but also to visit that market. So I won't go into too much detail just yet. Andrea will discuss that in a little bit more in a little bit. So yeah, this is today's agenda. We'll keep it fairly short, so there's plenty of time for questions. So we're going to do a quick introduction about us and about you, essentially who this program is for. Matt is going to join us to talk about why Vietnam. He has been there for almost 19 years, so I like to think he can make a pretty strong case. And also why this program and how it can or cannot help you achieve your goals. The real goal for us here is to get a good cohort together of companies that we can support. So really it's about finding that fit, and then followed by a Q&A, your time to ask questions. Cool. So a little bit about us. So we're based in Sydney, set up and founded in 2016. To date, we've supported close to, or a little bit over actually, 800 tech companies to access new revenue and capital. So that could be, for instance, new revenue in Vietnam or raise funding here in Sydney. Usually the way we work is we don't consult or work with consult companies directly. Generally, we work with governments, including some of the ones that are mentioned here, who work with us to deliver programs like this. So we usually work with companies in cohorts, really aiming to get companies to get to know each other, learn from each other, and grow into these markets together, which is generally quite helpful and more fun. But what we also often find is being able to lean on each other and being able to work together through some of these common challenges increases your chances of success as well. So that's enough about us. That's the boring bit. About your speakers today. So I already briefly introduced myself. So I'm the CEO of Haymarket HQ. I also run a small family office on the side and work with a large number of the companies that come through our programs. Andrea Plawutsky is our senior program manager and loves to sit on boards as well. So you might see her face on various different boards, government boards, as well as company boards. Matthew Lowry. So Matthew has been for 19 years in Vietnam, where he set up Acclaim Vietnam. And Matthew is our subject matter expert when it comes to Vietnam, really. And I'll leave it to Matthew to explain a little bit more about what Acclaim does in a second as well. So who this program is designed for. So we essentially put it already in here. This is really more for companies, not those in the idea stage, but those that have already achieved product market fit, or that have some customers and some revenue here in Australia and are looking to expand beyond Australia's borders. Or you are looking for tech talent in Vietnam, like for instance, NAB has done, or various other large corporates in Australia. The key thing probably is that you want to be an early mover in what is now the fastest growing trading partner of Australia. And you're ready to spend a few months with us to deep dive into Vietnam, and specifically to deep dive in the opportunity for your company in Vietnam. Because I'd like to emphasize as well that yes, there will be masterclasses, but this is very much a mentor-driven program. We're really trying to evaluate your specific opportunity there with the help of our in-country partners. And last but not least, you're keen to join a 5-day mission where we'll actually fly into Vietnam. I think we're going to Ho Chi Minh as well as Hanoi to explore your opportunity, to connect you with potential local partners, but also to sort of showcase some of the, for instance, tech outsourcing companies that Vietnam has to offer, and some of the tech companies that the country itself has as well. So to once again say this program is really more for those companies that have already achieved product market fit and are ready to grow into their next market. I think that is my bit. Now I'd like to give it over to Matthew.
Thank you, Duco. So just before we sort of go to the why Vietnam, just introducing myself and my business, Acclaim. As Duco said, I've been here almost 19 years. I'm an Australian chartered accountant, to Big 6, Big 4 background in Australia. And Acclaim in Vietnam helps foreign investors establish, operate, and be compliant in country. I started this business coming up 9 years ago. We have 140 staff across 3 offices. We're now part of the Acclaim Group, which has 5 offices in Australia, and offices all around Asia. So we're an Asia, Australia focused business, but I'm in charge of Vietnam. I started this, and this is my area of expertise. Some of our clients are all foreign invested. Some of our clients include the Victorian government, the Queensland government, the West Australian government. We've set up and look after their representative offices. We do work with Marriott, Moët Hennessy, some of those large ones. We do work with a lot of small. We do market entry, we do entrepreneurs. We have a balance, and we like that mix. We've done quite a bit of work with Haymarket HQ on programs like this because we enjoy the journey, we enjoy the education, and we enjoy selling Vietnam. And for me, the Australian-Vietnam connection is something which I'm passionate about, and that fits into this program and hopefully meeting the objectives that you all have. So why Vietnam? You've got just on 100 million people.
Bit of noise.
There you go.
Yep. Okay, I did it. Yeah.
So just on 100 million people, and so 4 times the population of Australia, and it's young. So you're looking at sort of almost a 10-year younger population in Vietnam versus Australia, and that compares to other developed countries. And again, Japan's much older again. So you've got this. The 69 million internet users, 61 million smartphone users, I think that's actually well and truly under-quoted. I think it's significantly higher. It's a very connected, it's a very phone app driven, everything's free Wi-Fi. It is a connected community. And there's pros and cons to that, but there's opportunities. The tech in IT engineers, Vietnam has grown. Go back. Yeah. So Vietnam's grown into a very much an IT development center. We've got engineers. The ANZ and NAB will talk about shortly, but there's significant numbers, and that's grown where Vietnam does not have a strong spoken English language background like India or Philippines, but it does have a very strong tech background, and IT engineers has taken advantage. Fastest growing digital economy in Southeast Asia. We released the FinTech report yesterday. It is opportunistic and it is growing very fast. VC funding, and it is Google's put a lot of money in. There is a lot of development of VC funding into Vietnam, particularly in tech-related sectors. And the China dividend, we can't underestimate the benefit Vietnam's had in the last 5 years of not being China. The US in particular, but also Europe, that has pushed people away from China, and Vietnam's been the biggest beneficiary because of that, is that Vietnam's not China, yet it has a lot of the parameters that made China attractive many years ago, but it's open. It is everyone's friend, and it has all the free trade agreements more than Australia, and it is open for businesses. It has no enemies, everyone's their friend. That's the approach. Economic growth, one of the few economies that continued through COVID growing. It is still growing. It may hit 5% this year. It's definitely got a lot of growth in it, and next year should be significantly higher. And globally, it's been one of the best performers. And most particularly, Australia a few years ago tried to develop a special relationship to increase Vietnam in its trade figures. It's now top 10. And it's the fastest growing, and the Australian government's putting significant resources, including this program funding, to increase that trade, increase the two-way trade and two-way investment. We see a lot of ministers visiting, we see a lot of trade delegations. There's a focus from Australia, and with that becomes opportunities to take advantage of them. And the last one, the fun fact sitting in there, the 5th most spoken language in Australia, which is interesting, but Australia has the 3rd largest population of Vietnamese-born people outside of Vietnam in Australia. So there is a strong connection culturally, historically, between the countries. So, next slide. Now, this is one of the interesting ones, is perceptions of Vietnam. So if you look at the US perception, they've always been sort of the last 30 years, they saw China as the manufacturing arm. They saw China as an extension of the US. And so they're quite happy with that approach of seeing other countries in a positive light. Vietnam evolved, even though the Vietnam War had a tarnished reputation for Vietnam in the US mindset. That movement from we're comfortable with China, now we're comfortable with Vietnam for growth. It's quite interesting where the majority of firms see Vietnam as the right place, the expansion, the comfort, and what they want to do. So it's quite interesting where the US, that positive perception and the default perception in many ways, we see that in boardrooms. Japan were one of the very first investors. So in 86, 87, when Vietnam started opening up, it was Japan initially, Korea, Taiwan, but Japan's been one of the leading investors and remains so to this date. And that relationship strong, that feeling and and the perception towards Vietnam is strong as one of the default locations. Australia has not been, and interestingly, Vietnam is definitely not seen as historically as a default destination, sort of that weird place in the distance. It's not seen as the norm to use Vietnam. But more particularly, and something I find interesting, is it was identified as one of the most difficult markets to enter. Now, it is challenging because it's not a common law structure, but to give an example, there are less restrictions on a foreign-owned company in Vietnam than Singapore. Singapore, you must have Singapore residents on your board. Vietnam doesn't. You can just set up a company and fully foreign-owned, foreign head, foreign directors. There's less restrictions, and the perception doesn't always match reality. It's complicated, but it's just a process. And so part of our job here is to help clear and demystify, make it attractive, because it's not as hard as people think, and it's open, and it is similar time zones. It has a lot of features that make it a very useful opportunity, both from a consumer market, but also from an access to technology, access to resources, and the connection to Australia. So 4 sort of considerations we've laid out here for what you need to think about and what opportunities will exist for Vietnam. So the first circle there is looking at a tech powerhouse. The digital transformation and technology adoption is huge. Pre-COVID, it was happening. During COVID now, we've moved to a lot of tech developments, regional, global developments, but Vietnam taking advantage of that for domestic use as well. You've got a lot of fintech, crypto. Vietnam's the fourth country with the 4th highest penetration of crypto in both development, use, etc. Just interestingly, crypto is not a defined asset and it can't be used for currency. So payments aren't being made in crypto, yet it's still the 4th biggest user of crypto in the world. And that's from a development, so technology-driven development perspective. And that is where they're saying the opportunities exist. App development, huge numbers of the apps that you are seeing on app stores are coming from Vietnam. It may be back office driven. It may be developed by Vietnamese developers. And that's an opportunity, again, is to tap into their experience and the technical resources. So the tech powerhouse is something which has been developed over a longer period of time, but we're seeing this curve now where it's definitely on the forefront in the globe. We go down to emerging technologies. So we've got an opportunity in Vietnam where it's come from a low base. It now has a lot of opportunities, and the Vietnamese government is pushing back on basic manufacturing. They want tech-driven operations. They want cutting edge. They want people that are building environmentally friendly, long-term sustainable projects. Lego's got a $1 billion project coming in, and it's a green, efficient. The whole assessment process has to meet international standards, but Vietnam is driving that. And the transformation of businesses and the opportunities to come with that, the smart cities, the waste development, they're just all of those elements. Vietnam's now needing that experience that Australia has and opportunities to be at the forefront of what Vietnam wants into the future. And it's dictating that as part of the investment process. The tech talent, there's over 400,000 IT engineering in the sector. Again, I think that's understated. I think that's 400,000 quality. And there are 50,000 IT graduates annually. I was advised there was more than 75 or 78,000, but 50,000 again is the quality coming out of that program. So these are understating what's available in market. And you've got the skills rankings that is coming globally. Vietnam is carefully up on the top of those. So you've got developers like Gameloft. All the Asphalt series have effectively been done in Vietnam. A lot of these development you see is coming in here. We have a lot of clients who do either back office support or core development in Vietnam for the technology and the games and their products. And it is very much something which they are growing and moving more to Vietnam to support as it proves itself to them once they have done that. And the last thing is I want to touch on here is sort of one of the considerations is the success stories. You don't hear a lot about them, but interestingly, before I touch on those sort of examples in front of you there are a lot of similarities because Australia does have influence. So your accounting system, Vietnam has a BAS. It's almost identical. Your quarterly or monthly, the dates, the requirement, it's identical. You can overlay. The only difference is default year, it's a calendar year, not a 30 June year end, but you can choose a 30 June year end. So a Vietnamese company, if you have a 30 June year end, an Australian company will have the exact same reporting requirements when it comes to tax and payroll, etc. It is identical, which is quite, and that's the Australian influence. Our phone codes, 1-800-1900 numbers, 10-digit mobile phones, numbers, that's the same. And that was Telstra initially put that infrastructure in place. And we have a lot of those influence in the services sector and society, and those influences may continue. NAB's been only in recent years ramped up their development centre. They have, my understanding, over 1,200 staff recruited in the past 12 months. Huge. And they are doing that, and they're doing all of their front development. So the website and app development's all being done in Vietnam, and it is non-voice, even though there's 1 million graduates each year for year 12 and 90% are doing English. We still don't regard Vietnam at this stage as being a place for English language support. Everything else is there. So NAB's taking advantage of that, and they're going to keep growing that. And they're all in on what they've got in Vietnam to support Australia, and they've centralised those functions. Another good example recently is the Huan Me Medical Corporation, or ACHS International from Australia, is helping them. So Huan Me is New Zealand owned, has acquired a lot of hospitals. Huan Me, Huan Phuc, Prima have brought together up to about 15 different centres. It's the largest private medical centre. It's been a consolidation. They've sought Australian guidance on technological and risk management and standards accreditation to try to bring this together to make it world best practice. And Vietnamese businesses want international best practice. They want process. They want technology as the forefront. This is an example of how we can, as Australians, can do that. Another great example is language confidence, where Galaxy Education is a large player in the Vietnamese market. It's a conglomerate. This is one of education units, their language units. They've come to Language Confidence from Australia to help them with their AI interaction to teach English and use the Australian knowledge of how to get that out and use technology to lead education and relying upon that. And that was recently announced. It's those sort of learnings and opportunities really present opportunities to people to come into the country. So technology, resources, opportunities, in-country deployment, and opportunities to do collaborations and successes in country. So Andrea, I might pass across to you now to say how we take advantage of those considerations and how that then applies to the program.
Lovely. Thank you very much for that, Matt. And I just want to say that those are great case studies because, of course, that gives you fintech, it gives you medtech, it gives you edutech. So there are opportunities across a range of different technologies and tech areas, whether that's for tech talent or whether that's for the sales capacity as well. So with the program, obviously you get Duco, Matt, and myself as a dedicated team, but we also draw a lot on in-market experts. So please don't think that we are the only ones presenting to you. We have a number of Vietnamese partners as well that we do work with. So we are the facilitators of the program. Matt obviously has a great deal of local knowledge and a tremendous understanding from a regulatory point of view, but we do work with a much broader group of individuals dependent on the group that comes into the program. So it really is dedicated to your own personalized needs. So the virtual program at the beginning, for the first couple of months, we do the masterclasses about Vietnam, which will cover things like the cultural aspect, the doing business, the regulatory environment in a little bit more depth than what Matt has been sharing with you to date. And we take that a step further, dependent on, again, the needs of the cohort. There will be a group of 10 companies participating. Then where we get into the specialized areas, the advisory sessions, those are one-on-one with yourselves and one of our team. as well as the mentoring will be with an industry or a domain expert. So what we do is we really work with you to develop your market entry strategy into Vietnam. And from that, we can identify the ideal mentor who can provide you feedback and challenge your market entry assumptions. And preferably where possible, they also do introductions as well. We're also on this program specializing in market positioning and research. So we have dedicated portion of the program to working with focus groups that will be able to take your hypothesis and actually test it in market with a number of companies or with individuals, with end users, etc., dependent on what your hypothesis is. So that's a really important component. So what we're really trying to help you do here is fast track that understanding. Is your product market fit there? What is the approach you need to take? Is the price point appropriate? If it's from a tech point of view, is that the right tech company to be working with, etc. So there are a number of different things that we can look at in that market research piece. And again, that product review. So whether it's research or a product review, again, it depends on what your proposition for Vietnam is. As Duco mentioned, there is a 5-day trade mission where we will be in Ho Chi Minh City and in Hanoi for 3 days in Ho Chi Minh and 2 days in Hanoi, with meetings with government, with potential partners, with vetted service providers, potential customers, and really giving you a sense of the lay of the land, particularly if it's your first time having traveled to Vietnam. You will be doing so in the position that you've got a lot of support around you that can help you understand your opportunities in market. The timing of what we're providing, the virtual program runs from mid-September when we kick off to the end of November. That's where there's the masterclasses to learn more about the market, that one-on-one, and your online dashboard with the frameworks and the resources. That's also when we'll be starting some of the research piece and the market validation. And then you really can validate through the trade visit. Those dates have been set. We will be traveling on the Sunday, the 3rd of December, and coming back on the 9th of December. You're obviously entitled to stay longer if you would like to. But those dates have been set to allow you the possibility to plan, to arrange visas, to put in place sort of more advantageous flight arrangements, etc. So they've been worked around to fit both the program, but also not deferring into the Christmas period. And again, that's going to be meetings with government, potential partners and customers, and the ecosystem visits. So really importantly, we'll be visiting the tech scene in Vietnam. There will be cultural activities and networking events with a number of stakeholders. And that's something we do with all our programs. And we find those really valuable because it's those conversations with people that they then will refer you on to other people in addition. So that really provides you a much greater networking, little black book at the end of the program when you're done, essentially. So how can we help you with the program? It has been designed to help you achieve commercial outcomes. This is not purely an educational piece. So we do position this to try and help you cut down the time and cost to market, that you are getting local insights from people within your industry, but also that you've got a black book essentially with potential partners and customers. So you are fast tracking rather than going and trying to do the door knocking on your own. We do take a very lean approach to international expansion, so we will work through that hypothesis with you, trying to understand where are the areas that you need to focus on, what the gaps are, and through that analysis, trying to figure out the best approach and what are the actions you need to take to help you really, I guess, cut away any of the challenges where possible that you're learning from those who have been before you. And then the fine print. So the program has been designed essentially for tech and tech-enabled companies and also industry bodies and associations. And we haven't really touched much on the industry bodies and associations, but essentially we see the opportunity for you to further understand Vietnam and the opportunities on behalf of your members if you are representing an industry body and association. So there may be opportunities for connections in country, partnering with different associations and bodies, but also for you to take some of that knowledge back to your members to help them in a particularly in a priority sector that has been identified as part of the Australia-Vietnam Enhanced Economic Agreement, which is the strategy under which the funding for this program has been provided. We ask that the companies have at least a minimum of 3 employees. So you've got the resources internally to be able to focus on market expansion. Applications are open to companies from all across Australia, but you must have an ABN. It is supported by the Australian Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. So the program is only open to Australian-based companies. It is a competitive program that is limited to 10 participants. We already have actually received 12 applications to date, and I do anticipate that we will receive more. So we do ask you when you're filling out the application to sort of put your best foot forward and give us an understanding of who you are and what you'd like to achieve, because we will try to pick the 10 companies that we believe we can provide the greatest value to. In terms of the program, it is a free program to participate for the 3 months of learning, but participants are required to fund their own travel costs. Now, we are trying to negotiate a competitive rate for the accommodation. We will leave the flights to your own arrangements, but when you're in country, quite a bit of it will be hosted. So some of the meals are paid for, the events are hosted, etc. So those are all part of the program, but you will have the odd lunch or dinner that will be at leisure that you will be required to pay for yourself. But there are no additional program fees above and beyond that. And as I mentioned, the travel dates are the 3rd to the 9th of December, so you can put that in your diary. We do ask that people who apply for the program do have the intention of actually participating in the travel as well. And so we're going to open it to questions. I'm just going to leave it here for 1 second, though, if anyone is interested. This is the QR code back to the website. If you would like to take a photograph of that, or you can go on to the Haymarket HQ website, and it's the Australia-Vietnam Growth Program linkage that you can look at for if you are interested in completing an application form. And so now it's over to you if you have any questions. And sorry, in terms of the question regarding receiving a copy of the presentation via email, yes, I can send out a copy of that to those who have been on the line. That's fine.
No questions, Andrea. They seem to be quite well informed.
Excellent. I'm sure there must be some questions.
We'll be filling in applications.
Yes. Thank you. Yes. And one thing we will note during the presentations, Matt and I do ask where possible for the program that we have you, that we can actually see you. We get you to put your, yes, I will share the QR code. We do get you to put your screens on so that we can see you, that we really try and create learning opportunities between the group as well. So it's really important that while we and the presenters that we work with over the course of the program provide a lot of knowledge, there's also a lot of knowledge within the cohort itself, within the participants, and we do ask that people share their stories. It is an interactive program. We do keep the programming we do recognize you are running businesses, you are busy people, so it is an hour and a half once a week for the sessions, and then the advisory sessions are scheduled one-on-one, so that's at the time that's convenient for you.
And I would like to sort of add to that, Andrea, that the collaboration between participants is something that I see as one of the great outcomes, is that, and the friendships and the connections created. And so in those sessions, we're sharing, we are talking amongst as a group, not just as lecturers in that context. So it does make it much more enjoyable and practical.
Very true. And in terms of the eligibility, yes, we do ask that the companies generally have a minimum of 3+ employees. But if you have less than that, come to us and have a discussion. If there's a particular reason that you feel like this is still the right program for you, we are happy to have a conversation directly. It's just more out of experience that we generally find the larger the company, it allows you the time to focus on your market expansion, because it does take a lot of time away from running the business on a day-to-day basis. In terms of the travel costs, they are covered by each company. So you will be required to cover your own flights and your own accommodation. But as I said, there will be much of the hosting in country is done, and the actual DFAT support of the program is for all of the market research, for the mentors, for the program itself as well that we are running. So you get the team of the 3 of us plus a number of market experts. And please don't feel shy if you would like to put your hand up. I guess one of the things I would like to ask you, do any of you have existing relations or business in Vietnam at the moment? Sort of what is your experience with Vietnam? We have quite a mixed group on the line.
Some with Vietnamese names.
Yes, I would assume there's some connections that are very direct.
Maybe I'll pick one, like my teacher used to do when I was a little bit younger. I have one in particular in mind.
Oh, right. Sorry, Duco.
Yeah,
Ryan,
go
would
for
like to
it.
jump in?
Sorry, you've got me in the car, as you can see. So this is about obviously export from Australia into Vietnam. And I think somebody touched on it earlier, but is there also the opportunity, we make tech products, is there the opportunity to look at finding somebody who could be a supplier or make our products within Vietnam to then distribute elsewhere? Well, that's not part of the program.
No, it is a two-way program, very
Right,
much.
that's
So it
both.
is for Australian companies.
Right.
And we did see tech talent, but it could also be tech manufacturing potentially. We will focus primarily on the tech aspect, but the manufacturing potentially, particularly if we look at the sector you're in and go, yeah, we're able to facilitate that. We're very interested in looking at that. Ryan, sure.
It's two-way trade and two-way investment. It's very broad from what the government objectives are from that. It's not just one way. It's just more of sector for this program.
Yeah, well, that's even better than I thought. So great.
Excellent. And the reason we focus on tech, sorry, just jumping in, is we have run two programs called the Vietnam Business Booster, and the primary focus was sort of wine, food, and beverage. So I think what we're really trying to differentiate is this program is not open to the wineries, because we had almost 100 applications from wineries for previous programs, particularly as they were diversifying away from China. And while we love the wineries, they sit very close to my heart. This program is not intended for them. So.
And before we go back to Duco and doing his school teacher question, companies, traditional industries, but looking at tech, that's that exact sourcing. Yes, but there needs to be a tech element. So for William's question, provided it fits into the sectors, and it may not fit perfectly, reach out, and Andrew and the team will be able to sort of fine tune and assist.
Yes, Winston.
Andrea, can you speak to I don't know. You speak to the medtech, medical tech, medtech.
Yes,
health
medtech.
tech.
Yep.
Can you speak to the Vietnam's health tech capability industry? Do they make devices? They do health tech software.
I can talk to that. There's all of the above. We actually had a delegation here about a month ago from some of the Australian medical researchers coming up here, spending time with the Vietnam sector. I was at a seminar sponsored by the Victorian government. There was about 18 individuals there, doctors, researchers, developers, product developers. There's an ecosystem, and it's expanding and growing. There's a lot of that medtech and medical research and technology driven elements here, and the core group that is fostering that. So absolutely.
Do you mind if I have a follow-up question? Do they make devices, like prototype devices?
Absolutely. So there are restrictions on domestic market and how you go about it. So you've got two streams. Those are working within the restrictions and focusing on domestic market, and those are looking international export. So yes, it does. So if you're looking, Vietnam's biggest export are Samsung phones. The biggest export is technology, and that's growing, and replacement is becoming Apple's second largest destination. So a lot of that tech development sector and the rest exists, and that's only in recent years. It's been a build up. With that, you get all of the flow through when it comes to sectors, and medtech is one of those sectors benefiting most in that it gives you opportunity. You've got first tier, second tier, third tier manufacturers in that space who now have the ability to produce things they couldn't before. So there is there. It's fairly nascent, but it definitely exists, and it's something to look at because it's a market that probably has more opportunity than many others. And keep in mind, Vietnam's the second highest self-medicating country in the world. I think maybe it was India first, but you know, this idea of going to a pharmacy and walking in and just walking out with a handful of drugs is just normal practice in Vietnam. Just sort of indicative of the opportunities that exist.
Thank you.
Perhaps we won't be exporting that one back to Australia.
The technology, not the actual pharmacy.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I had a question, Andrea, Matthew, Vinod Tiwari from Power Ledger. We are actually involved in Vietnam doing some work with the main electric utility, the EVN company. And the project we're doing is actually sanctioned by the Ministry of Energy and the regulator to do a national pilot on peer-to-peer energy trading. So, and also in the past, we were part of Austrade's delegation to Vietnam just recently, about 4 or 5 months ago. So given what we're doing and connected through Austrade, do you see this as a duplication, or this is a complementary, adds on more wider perspective beyond what we, I mean, we have some level of engagement already there through Austrade?
Let me answer that partly, and then Andrew would finish off, is that what you're working through, particularly with EVN. EVN is a behemoth. It's a government. It's a socialist communist entity that is a monopoly in the power distribution and retailing in Vietnam. And what connections you have out of that are going to be very sort of focused and relatively limited. It may be all you need. It may be everything you need and the connections from that. This program is likely to give you a far broader and a far more, broad is probably the right word actually, overview of what is in Vietnam, opportunities, the people, and what exists. If your focus is electricity distribution, if your focus is helping out the pricing and the processes, you've probably got the right connections. If it is a broader appeal you're looking at going into rooftop solar, helping that industry which is booming and working much broader and commercially, then the program probably exists and will be worthwhile for you. We work with Austrade, we work with the consulate, the embassy, work with DFAT, and this is where Andrew and the team definitely sort of make sure that it's inclusive as much as we can across a broad range and not just looking narrowly focused.
Yeah, and just to add to that, Matt, that's a great response. It is also that cultural piece that we're able to support you with, and there's the market research piece as well. So some of those items probably would not be in your Austrade normal relationship that you've got with the trade mission, for example. So that working through the hypothesis, working through where are the challenges, where are the pain points in the relationship, whether it's from a cultural perspective or whether it's from the connections perspective, may be of value to you as well. So that is certainly something we would welcome you. And again, this comes back to the peer-to-peer learning. Your experiences with the government relations would be very valuable to the other peers in the program as well. So I think it could be both a learning possibility, but also perhaps a little bit of a mentoring to others in the program as well. And just to note, I would like to note, we've got Nguyen Do from Austrade on the call with us today. A number of the Austrade and the different government bodies are very supportive and shared also the MedTech story in a little bit more detail if you'd like to take a look at the chat, Winston, just referring to the fact that with the ACHSI signing that was with the trade minister earlier this year in April. So
Thank you.
Can I ask the question about artificial intelligence capabilities in Vietnam? You did mention some technology disciplines that they kind of focus on. Do they, where are they up to with artificial intelligence in Vietnam? Can you build artificial intelligence in Vietnam?
You can. It's something that is definitely happening. It's great because it covers English language capabilities better than anything. So it actually gives businesses the ability to sort of compensate for grammar and the natural English, which is being used. I interviewed one of the heads of RMIT's master's programs the other day, which we released on our YouTube channel probably later this week. And one of the questions I asked was AI in education, and it is a core part. It's been integrated into what they're doing as AI approved elements, and AI is not permitted in certain elements. It's just become integrated, and that's across the universities. And RMIT, for example, is a leader, probably the leading university, but it's just the norm now, and it is definitely in the business. We see it around, and it is it's definitely being embraced now. opportunities out of that, and what that leads to is exactly what the program sits here for, to explore and learn more about that relevant to the business. But it's definitely not shunned in any way. It is being embraced. The government doesn't quite know how to control it. It likes to control things. And as a result, because it's moving so fast, it gives great opportunities.
And building, like actually getting a team in Vietnam to build like machine learning or artificial intelligence, do they have those capabilities?
Yeah, definitely. So you'll find teams that can do pretty much everything. It's just a matter about as new technologies come up, you're going to have resource limitations in any country. You'll find that Vietnam's tech process and tech talent is second to none. And that's why we've got a lot of clients who have moved development centers from India and Philippines, particular Ukraine with the crisis. A lot of them have just set up and say Vietnam's our hub. We've got US medical centers, US financial centers that use Vietnam as the development and report back as their back office. So we see that because they can get their engineers, they can get those who are either have experience or quickly pick it up. So with AI specifically, yes. How much? I think it's very early to give you any quantitative numbers, but by absolutely that it's not something that is Vietnam. You'd find difficulty in Vietnamese developers either knowing or picking up and be able to sort of help you with that with the process.
I'll be asking you a practical question. What's the approximate cost of a software engineer 2 years out of university? Aussie dollars.
Yeah, 2 years out of university, the engineer is probably going to cost you around about per month. It's broad. It's going to cost you about $600 to $700 for the first year. They'll probably go up to $1,200 to $1,400. Sort of you're looking at, but ranges. You pay up to $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a month, $8,000 a month at sort of higher end. But you're looking at considerably less. So $2,000 to $3,000 would get you a 3, 4, 5 year experienced person. You're looking at, and this is just very broad numbers. It depends on whether they're full stack coding or whether they're simple just front end development. It varies. So your graduate, you're looking at around $500, $600 per month for a graduate. And then stepping up. It steps up quite fast, but stepping up from there. What we find, it is about half what it would cost in India at the moment, is sort of as a comparison, as from what our my clients sort of tend is about half the price of what an Indian comparable recruitment in India is.
And are we allowed to recruit directly with employment contract?
Probably not for this subject topic here, but you can engage short term, but we wouldn't. There are methods to do that. Acclaim does employer of records. We host employees legally for others. Whether you set up your own, that's part of the program, because part of the program will help work out what is relevant for you based on your model and mentoring, because there may be 4 or 5, 6 options and 3 that may be terrible, and you've got to work through that and develop and work out the answers.
And now Yuri also had a question about the EMDG grant. Essentially, if you are traveling overseas and incurring expenses on behalf of marketing the business, I do believe it should be eligible. It is essentially, and actually, Duco, perhaps you would like to jump in. I think most of the programs we've had participants who have been able to declare EMDG if there have been expenses incurred. Yeah,
what Andrea said, although it really depends on your company. So in the end, it's more about, is your company eligible? If your company is, then usually our programs and services like this tend to be eligible, but they look at that at a per project or per company basis.
Yeah, that's one of the look at them. Like if a company is already on the MDG grants, in my case, I'm already approved. Is it like part of it because I'm already expanding to Singapore, and this like adds another area? So that's just my question, if it's aligned.
Yeah, so generally, yes, but it's best to get in touch with the team, I think at Austrade directly, or the MGG team, because in the end, they make the decision, we don't.
Sure.
Yeah, and they've changed a lot of the regulations in the last sort of 12 to 18 months as we've been working through. So it also depends on whether you've reached the top limit, etc. as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Marie, sorry, thank you, Yuri. Marie, yes.
Yeah, so obviously, I have an interest in the biotech sector. My company is an AI-driven clinical trial patient recruitment and management platform. And so our customers are biotech and medtech device companies, pharma companies that are undertaking clinical trials. I can see, the current listing on clinicaltrials.gov in the US, there are, I guess, several hundred trials that are happening in Vietnam, but I guess I'm just interested as to what's the view on this sector?
From what I've seen, as I said, I joined a seminar a little while ago. There is quite a lot of interest, and there's a lot of interest from Singapore into Vietnam, interest in Australia, and interest in the other countries using Vietnam for clinical trials. Vietnam is quite open in many ways. It is restricted, regulated, but it is an open market in that it wants to be part of and wants to facilitate the space. So it's very specialised. There is a core group of people that part of this process we would look at introducing as mentors that are specialists that can talk about the pros and cons, what they've achieved and what they can't achieve, and that's part of actually working it through. But by all means, this is definitely one of those sectors that is, I'd say, the opportunities are definitely there, and there is a lot happening. We've got experts in Australia that spend a lot of time in Vietnam on that. There is one of the consultants to Climb Australia he sits at 3 hospitals in Australia doing research, and he's involved in research in Vietnam as a personal connection. So the ease there, and subject to sort of joining the program, it's something we can help instigate, get the mentors in place, as well as looking at your business model itself. So definitely, and clinical trials they're happening and they're encouraged, and it's something to look at.
And from I guess a patient or a participant perception, you mentioned that English is not, a default. So we'd be looking at translation. We'd be looking at needing, the skills, language skills, Vietnamese.
Yes, medical is actually quite good for English language skills, which is interesting. So just to clear that up for everyone here, every student who finishes secondary school has to do a foreign language, and more than 90% choose English. All my stuff, English is the sole language we use in the office. English is the business language. If you're working in factories, you obviously won't have good English skills, and you won't have good spoken English skills in there. But you'll find the younger generation, English is a secondary language. It's not native, but it's there. And in particular professions, so in finance, it's English. In medical, there's a very strong English background, and a lot of the research is being done in English, and produce a lot of the data sets because international acceptance of that. So just bear in mind, depending upon where you are going and what you're doing, language may or may not be a barrier, but it's something just to finish and we get close to the end here, keep in mind that I don't speak very good Vietnamese at all. I can survive, but not speaking Vietnamese has never held me back in Vietnam at all. And there's always support. You'll find people around you who can speak English. So again, all of my staff in the office, every one of them, English is our sole language we use for communication, other than compliance. And you'll find in sectors that across the tech sector, they have a good breadth of English because it's an international business as far as sort of anything technology driven. It's an international business.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a question about IP protection? If you're building something novel in Vietnam, is that a risk?
No more than any other country, and I think that's one of the topic sectors we spend some time on in the program, is looking at that, because there's pros and cons. There is enforcement. It is clunky, but it exists, and you're looking at Madrid Protocol foundation in Vietnam for doing that. But again, a developing country, there are risks, but the process is no different than what you do in any country in essence. But it's a good question. We do spend time on that in the program and go through how that works, what you can do, what to look out for, and some of the options that exist in protecting and if developing something novel.
Oh, thanks. Cheers.
So as we come towards the end, if there are any specific questions, I'm going to share with you in the chat for everybody my email address directly. I think you will all have it as well because I sent you the reminder for today, but nonetheless, I'll just pop it in the chat. Please do feel free to reach out, ask me any question. They're all very good questions, but we are also mindful that we're going to be losing a number of you just as the day goes on to other obligations, etc. So there's my email. I would welcome the chance to follow up with any further things that will help you decide. And as Matt said, I mean, a lot of these things are things we will be covering in a bit more depth in the program itself. We do tailor the program specifically to the cohort of 10. So those questions are the ones that will end up being the ones that filter through in the information. A lot of this is worked through one-on-one with you. Matt obviously is a font of knowledge, but we also have experts in other areas outside of as well. So, for example, in clinical trials, we would be looking, for example, to bring in a medical expert with you. So it would not just be Matt that you're relying on. As much as he's got a great depth of knowledge, we will bring in those industry experts, etc., who are local as well. Are there any final questions? And this gives you a sense of how we run the sessions as well. We do them on Zoom. They're an hour to an hour and a half long. They are interactive. We do encourage the questions. We don't have all the answers. Sometimes we do have to go away and do our homework on particular topics. Vietnam is a rapidly changing and developing economy. So there's obviously opportunities that continue, and we can do our best to open doors to you really to find out the best answers for each of you specifically to what you're looking at. So there's been some fabulous questions. I'm very excited. I am looking forward to hopefully seeing a couple of applications out of the group that we would love to be working with you. So thank you all for your time. Thank you, Matt, for your time, and Duco. And any questions, please do be in touch. And we will share the recording if anyone's interested. I'll share the link with the slides as well.
Thank you.
Good luck, everyone, and hope to see you on the program.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.